I slammed the front door behind me, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my keys. The house was quiet, but the silence felt oppressive, heavy with unspoken truths. Jake's car wasn't in the driveway, and I knew exactly where he'd be. Not at work, like he'd told me this morning, but probably drowning his sorrows at O'Malley's again. "Damn it, Jake," I muttered, tossing my purse onto the kitchen counter. The answering machine blinked accusingly, and I hit play with more force than necessary. "Mrs. Lawson, this is Sandra from Midwest Insurance. I'm calling to follow up on the claim your husband filed last week regarding his termination." My stomach dropped. Termination? Jake had sworn up and down he'd quit his job at the bank 2 weeks ago, citing creative differences with his boss. I'd been skeptical. It was the third job he'd left in as many years, but I'd wanted to believe him. The machine beeped again. "Emma, honey, it's your mother-in-law. I hope you're not working too late again. Jake could really use your support right now. Call me back, dear." I deleted Martha's message with a vicious jab. Of course she'd take his side. In her eyes, Jake could do no wrong, and any of his shortcomings were clearly my fault. The front door creaked open, and I steeled myself. Jake stumbled in, reeking of whiskey and failure. "Hey, babe," he slurred, attempting a lopsided grin. "You're home early." "Cut the crap, Jake," I snapped. "I know you were fired. Why did you lie to me?" His face fell, guilt flashing in his bloodshot eyes. I didn't want to disappoint you again? So you thought lying was the better option?" I ran a hand through my hair, frustration building. How are we supposed to trust each other if you can't even be honest about something like this? Jake slumped onto the couch, head in his hands. "I'm sorry, Em. I really messed up this time." "This time?" I echoed, my voice rising. "Jake, this is becoming a pattern. We can't keep living like this. What happened?" He mumbled something about a missed deadline and an angry client. The same old story, different day. I paced the living room, my mind racing. "We need to make some changes," I said firmly. "I can't keep being the only reliable income in this household, and you need to." The phone rang, cutting me off. Jake lunged for it, relief evident on his face at the interruption. "Hello? Oh, hi, Mom," he said, shooting me a pleading look. I rolled my eyes and headed for the kitchen, needing some space. As I filled a glass of water, Jake's voice drifted in from the other room. "Yeah, Emma's here. She, found out about the job. No, I haven't told her that part yet." I froze, my grip tightening on the glass. What else was he hiding? "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea," Jake was saying, his voice low and urgent. "Emma won't—" "No, I know you're trying to help, but—" I stormed back into the living room. "Won't what, Jake? What brilliant plan has your mother cooked up now?" Jake's eyes widened in panic. "Nothing. It's nothing. Mom, I gotta go." He hung up quickly, avoiding my gaze. "Jake," I said, my tone dangerous. "What aren't you telling me?" He fidgeted with the phone cord, looking everywhere but at me. "It's just, Mom thought it might be good if she came to stay with us for a while, to help out, you know?" The glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Water and shards of glass spread at my feet, a perfect metaphor for the mess our life had become. "Your mother," I said slowly, "wants to move in with us?" Jake nodded miserably. "Just temporarily, until I can get back on my feet." I stared at him, speechless. This was a nightmare. Martha, with her judgmental looks and backhanded compliments, living under our roof? The very thought made my skin crawl. "Emma, please," Jake pleaded. "It won't be for long. We need the help, and—" "We?" I interrupted, my voice sharp. "There is no we in this decision, Jake. You and your mother don't get to decide how we handle your mistakes." I turned on my heel, carefully stepping over the broken glass. "Clean this up," I said over my shoulder. "I need some air." As I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, I heard Jake call out desperately, "Emma, wait! Where are you going?" I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "To figure out how to fix the mess you've made of our lives," I replied, not looking back. "And Jake, don't wait up." I stormed into my office the next morning, my head pounding from a restless night. The last thing I needed was to deal with Martha's judgmental attitude on top of Jake's lies. But there she was, her number flashing on my phone as it rang incessantly. "Emma speaking," I answered curtly, bracing myself. "Emma, dear," Martha's saccharine voice oozed through the line. "I hope I'm not interrupting your very important work." I gritted my teeth. "What can I do for you, Martha?" "I'm worried about Jake," she sighed dramatically. He's been so down lately, I can't help but wonder if your career focus might be affecting him. My grip tightened on the receiver. Excuse me? Well, you know how men are, Martha continued, oblivious to the anger building in my chest. They need support, attention. Jake's always been sensitive. Perhaps if you were home more. Martha, I cut her off, my voice dangerously low. Jake is a grown man. His job troubles are his own responsibility. But as his wife, I interrupted, I've been supporting us financially for years while Jake hops from job to job. Don't you dare imply this is my fault. Martha gasped, affronted. I'm only trying to help Emma. Someone needs to be there for Jake, and if you're too busy climbing the corporate ladder. Stop right there, I snapped. My career isn't the problem. Jake's inability to hold down a job is. And frankly, Martha, your coddling isn't doing him any favors. Well, I never, Martha huffed. If that's how you feel, maybe it's best if I come stay with you both for a while. Jake clearly needs a supportive presence at home. My blood ran cold. That won't be necessary, I said firmly. Jake and I can handle our own affairs. We'll see about that, Martha replied ominously before hanging up. I slammed the phone down, fuming. The nerve of that woman. As if I hadn't bent over backwards trying to help Jake. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Mom's worried about us. Maybe we should let her visit? I ignored it, focusing on my work. Hours flew by as I buried myself in spreadsheets and client calls, anything to avoid thinking about the mess waiting for me at home. It was nearly 8 p.m. when I finally left the office. As I pulled into our driveway, I froze. Martha's car was parked in my usual spot. I found them in the kitchen, Jake nervously stirring a pot while Martha fussed over place settings. What's going on? I demanded, dropping my briefcase with a thud. Martha turned, all smiles. Emma, darling, we were wondering when you'd grace us with your presence. I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of preparing dinner. You took liberties, all right, I muttered, glaring at Jake. He avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in his cooking. Jake mentioned you two were having some difficulties. Martha continued, her tone dripping with false concern. I thought a nice family dinner might help smooth things over. I laughed bitterly. Family dinner? Is that what this is? Jake finally looked up. Em, please. Mom's just trying to help. Help? I exploded. By ambushing me in my own home? By blaming me for your problems? Martha gasped. I would never. Save it, I snapped. I heard enough this morning. You made it perfectly clear what you think of me and my career. Jake stepped between us. Emma, that's not fair. Mom's here because she cares. Oh, she cares all right, I retorted. She cares about controlling our lives, about making me the villain in her perfect little narrative. Now, Emma, Martha began, her voice sickly sweet. I know you're under a lot of stress, but there's no need for dramatics. Why don't we all sit down and... No, I said firmly. I'm not doing this. Not tonight. I turned to Jake. You invited her here without even asking me, didn't you? His guilty expression said it all. I grabbed my keys, my hands shaking with rage. Emma, wait, Jake called as I headed for the door. Where are you going? I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Somewhere I'm actually wanted, I replied coldly. Enjoy your family dinner. As I slammed the door behind me, I heard Martha's voice drift out. Well, I never. Jake, darling, you really need to do something about that wife of yours. I got in my car and drove, tears blurring my vision. How had my life come to this? And more importantly, how was I going to fix it? I pulled into the driveway after a long day at work, my stomach knotting as I saw Martha's car still parked where it had been for the past week. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and walked inside. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Martha's belongings were strewn everywhere, suitcases overflowing with clothes, boxes piled high with knickknacks, and framed photos of her and Jake littering every surface. What the hell is going on? I demanded, my voice echoing through the house. Jake emerged from the kitchen, looking sheepish. Emma, honey, I can explain. Jake invited me to stay for a while, Martha interrupted, sweeping into the room with a triumphant smile. Isn't it wonderful? Now I can help out around the house and give you more time to focus on your career. I felt the blood drain from my face. Stay? For how long? Jake shuffled his feet, avoiding my gaze. Well, you see, Mom's having some financial troubles of her own. I thought maybe she could live with us until she gets back on her feet. Live with us? I repeated, my voice rising. Jake, We can barely afford to keep ourselves afloat. How are we supposed to support your mother, too? Martha clucked her tongue. Now, Emma, there's no need to be so dramatic. I'm sure with a little belt-tightening we can make it work. After all, family comes first. I whirled on her. This isn't your decision to make, Martha. This is our home, mine and Jake's. Of course it is, dear, Martha said patronizingly. But Jake agrees it's for the best. Don't you, sweetheart? Jake nodded weakly, and I felt something inside me snap. How dare you? I hissed, advancing on him. How dare you make this decision without even talking to me? This is my house too, Jake. My life. Please, Jake pleaded. Mom needs our help. We can't just turn our backs on her. Like you turned your back on your job responsibilities. I shot back. Or how about how you've turned your back on our marriage by lying to me? Martha gasped. Emma, that's no way to speak to your husband. I rounded on her. And you waltz in here, criticizing my choices, blaming me for Jake's shortcomings, and now you expect me to support you? I'm only trying to help, Martha sniffed. Someone needs to keep this family together. We were doing just fine before you showed up, I snapped. Jake stepped between us. Emma, that's enough. Mom's staying, and that's final. I stared at him, disbelief and betrayal coursing through me. Final? You don't get to make that decision unilaterally, Jake. Well, someone has to make decisions around here, he retorted. You're never home anyway. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, grabbing my purse. I'm never home because I'm working my ass off to keep us afloat while you bounce from job to job. Emma, wait, Jake started, but I was already heading for the door. No, Jake, I'm done waiting. I'm done being the bad guy in this scenario. I paused at the threshold, turning back to face them both. You want to play happy families with Mommy Dearest? Fine, but don't expect me to stick around and watch. Where are you going? Jake called after me. To a hotel, I replied coldly, since apparently I'm no longer welcome in my own home. As I got into my car, I heard Martha's voice drift out the open door. Let her go, Jake. She'll come to her senses eventually. Now, why don't you help me unpack? I peeled out of the driveway, tears blurring my vision. How had it come to this? My husband choosing his mother over me, my home invaded, my life upended. As I drove aimlessly through the darkening streets, a cold resolve settled over me. If Jake and Martha wanted to play dirty, fine. Two could play at that game. It was time to start planning my next move and my revenge. I'd been staying at the Comfort Inn for a week, trying to gather my thoughts and plan my next move. The constant buzzing of my phone, Jake's desperate texts and Martha's passive-aggressive voicemails only fueled my determination. I needed to go home and face this head-on. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Jake's car was gone. Perfect. I could grab some clothes without a confrontation. But as I entered the house, I heard Martha's shrill voice coming from the kitchen. I don't care what it takes, Richard. You can't do this to me now. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. Martha was clearly in the middle of a heated phone call, unaware of my presence. Don't you dare bring up my indiscretion, she hissed. You're the one who's been embezzling from the company for years. My eyes widened. What on earth was going on? Fine, file for divorce, Martha spat. But don't think I won't take you for everything you're worth. I know where all the bodies are buried, Richard. The call ended abruptly, and I heard Martha's muffled sobs. Despite my anger, a small part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but that feeling evaporated as soon as Martha spoke again, this time leaving a voicemail. Jake, honey, it's Mom. Listen, I need you to talk to Emma about accessing some of your joint savings. It's just a small loan to tide me over. I'm sure she'll understand. After all, we're family. Red-hot fury coursed through me. How dare she? I stormed into the kitchen, making Martha jump. Emma! She gasped, hastily wiping her eyes. I didn't hear you come in. Clearly, I said coldly. Too busy trying to swindle us out of our savings, were you? Martha's face paled. You heard that? Every word, I confirmed, including your charming conversation with Richard. Infidelity and embezzlement, Martha. My. What would the neighbors say? You don't understand, Martha pleaded, her earlier bravado crumbling. Richard's trying to ruin me. I need help. I laughed bitterly. And your solution is to ruin us instead? To bleed us dry while you've been sitting pretty on stolen money for years? It wasn't like that, Martha protested. Richard handled all the finances. I didn't know. Save it, I snapped. I don't want to hear your excuses. What I want is for you to pack your bags and get out of my house. Martha's eyes narrowed. You can't throw me out. Jake invited me to stay. Watch me, I growled, advancing on her. You've manipulated and lied to us from the moment you got here. You blamed me for Jake's problems, invaded our home, and now you're trying to steal from us. I am Jake's mother, Martha shrieked. He'll never choose you over me. The front door slammed, and Jake's voice called out, Mom? Emma? What's going on? Martha's face transformed instantly, tears welling up in her eyes as Jake entered the kitchen. Oh, Jake, she wailed. Emma's being so cruel. She wants to throw me out on the street. Jake looked between us, confusion evident on his face. Emma, what? Don't you dare fall for her act, I warned him. Your mother's been lying to us both. She's getting divorced because she cheated on Richard, just who's been embezzling money for years, and now she wants to borrow from our savings to cover her ass. Jake's jaw dropped. Mom, is this true? Martha's sobs intensified. Jake, please. You don't understand. I had no choice. I turned to Jake, my voice steel. It's time to make a decision, Jake. Either she goes or I do, for good this time. The tension in the room was palpable as Jake looked between his sobbing mother and me, his wife, standing firm and unyielding. I could see the conflict in his eyes, years of maternal manipulation warring with the truth laid bare before him. Jake, I said softly, but with conviction. This is it. This is the moment that decides our future. Choose wisely. As Jake opened his mouth to speak, I held my breath, knowing that whatever came next would change all of our lives forever. Jake's eyes darted between Martha and me, his face a mask of confusion and pain. I need some time to think, he stammered, backing out of the kitchen. Jake, please! Martha wailed, reaching for him. But he was already gone, the front door slamming behind him. I stood there, trembling with rage and hurt. I hope you're happy, Martha, I spat. You've torn this family apart. Martha's tear-streaked face hardened. You did that all on your own, Emma, if you'd been a proper wife. Don't you dare, I hissed, cutting her off. I'm going to pack some things. When I come back down, I expect you to be gone. I stormed upstairs, my mind reeling. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I heard Martha's muffled voice. She was on the phone again. Quietly, I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. Richard, please, she was saying, her voice desperate. I need more time. No, don't call the lawyers yet. I have a plan. My blood ran cold. What was she up to now? Jake and Emma have savings, Martha continued. If I can just get access. No, they don't suspect anything. Emma's too caught up in her career to notice. I gripped the banister, my knuckles turning white. She was planning to steal from us. Just give me a week, Martha pleaded. I'll have the money, and we can make this all go away. I'd heard enough. I marched downstairs, my face a thundercloud. Martha jumped as I entered the room, hastily ending her call. Emma, Save it, I snapped. I heard everything. You're not just trying to borrow money, you're planning to steal it. Martha's face crumpled. You don't understand. Richard will ruin me if I don't pay him off. I had no choice. There's always a choice, I said coldly. And you chose to lie, cheat, and steal. Well, guess what? It ends now. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jake's number. It went straight to voicemail. Jake, it's Emma. Your mother is planning to steal our savings to pay off Richard. Come home now. We need to talk. Martha lunged for me, trying to grab the phone. You can't do this, she shrieked. I dodged her, my voice rising. Watch me. It's over, Martha. Your lies, your manipulation, all of it. Just then, the front door opened. Jake walked in, his face ashen. I heard everything, he said quietly. The voicemail came through as I was sitting in the car. Martha collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Jake, sweetheart, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Jake interrupted, his voice hard. You've been lying to us, Mom. Using us. And now you were going to steal from us? I felt a surge of hope. Was Jake finally seeing the truth? But then he turned to me, his eyes cold. And you, Emma, you've been so wrapped up in your job, you didn't even notice what was happening in our own home. My jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? I've been supporting us while you can't hold down a job. I've been putting up with your mother's constant criticism and manipulation. Jake shook his head. Maybe if you'd been around more, none of this would have happened. I stared at him, disbelief and fury warring inside me. In that moment, I saw my future laid out before me. A life of constantly being blamed, of never being enough, of sacrificing everything for a man who would always choose his mother over me. You know what? I said, my voice deadly calm. You're right, Jake. I haven't been around enough, so let me fix that right now. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. Jake called after me. Emma, wait! Where are you going? I paused at the threshold, looking back at the two people who had betrayed me so deeply. I'm leaving, I said firmly. For good this time. You two deserve each other. As I walked out, I heard Martha's triumphant whisper to Jake, It's for the best, darling. Now, about that savings account. I got into my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. This wasn't just about leaving anymore. It was about protecting myself and everything I'd worked for. It was time to call a lawyer and start divorce proceedings. Jake and Martha wanted to play dirty? Fine. I'd show them just how ruthless I could be. I sat in my lawyer's office, reviewing the divorce papers for what felt like the 100th time. 2 weeks had passed since I'd walked out on Jake and Martha, and I was determined to protect myself and my assets. Everything looks in order, Emma, my lawyer Sarah said. We've frozen the joint accounts, and Jake won't be able to touch your personal savings. Are you ready to file? I took a deep breath, my hand hovering over the papers. This was it, the point of no return. Just as I was about to sign, my phone buzzed. Martha's number flashed on the screen. Ignore it, Sarah advised, but something made me hesitate. I should at least hear what she has to say, I muttered, answering the call. Emma? Martha's voice was uncharacteristically small. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you, Martha, I replied coldly. Please, she begged. I've made a terrible mistake. I need your help. Against my better judgment, I found myself listening as Martha poured out a story of deceit and desperation. Her voice cracked as she admitted to her affair, to the lies she'd told Jake about me, to her plan to use our money to cover up her husband's embezzlement. I never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. I thought if I could just buy some time, fix things with Richard, but it's all fallen apart. He's filing for divorce, threatening to expose everything. I have nowhere else to turn. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, pity, vindication. Why are you telling me this now, Martha? Because I realize now how wrong I was, she whispered. About everything, about you. I need your help, Emma. Not just for me, but for Jake, too. My heart clenched at the mention of Jake's name. What about Jake? Martha's voice trembled. He's a mess, Emma. He finally sees the truth, but he doesn't know how to fix things. He misses you terribly. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. It's too late for that, Martha. I'm at my lawyer's office right now, about to file for divorce. No, Martha cried. Please, Emma, give us a chance to make this right. I'll tell Jake everything, I swear. Just come home. Let's talk face to face. I looked at the divorce papers in front of me, then at Sarah, who was watching me with concern. I need to think about this, I said finally. Of course, Martha replied, hope creeping into her voice. Take all the time you need. We'll be here. I ended the call, my mind reeling. Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Emma, whatever she said, remember why you're here. Don't let her manipulate you again. I nodded absently, but my resolve was wavering. What if Martha was telling the truth? What if this was my chance to finally get the whole story, to confront both her and Jake with all the facts? I need to go, I said abruptly, standing up. I'm sorry, Sarah. I need to see this through. Sarah sighed, but nodded understanding. Be careful, Emma, and call me if you need anything. As I drove home, was it still home? My emotions warred within me. Part of me was screaming that this was a trap, that Martha and Jake would never change. But another part, a part I thought I'd silenced, whispered of hope and second chances. I pulled into the driveway, my heart pounding. The house looked the same, but everything felt different. As I approached the front door, I saw Jake through the window, pacing anxiously. Our eyes met, and I saw a flash of relief cross his face. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. This was it, the moment of truth. Whatever happened next would determine the course of all our lives. I took a deep breath and opened the door, stepping into the unknown. As I stepped into the house, the air felt thick with tension. Jake stood in the living room, his face a mixture of relief and apprehension. Martha sat on the couch, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Emma, Jake breathed, taking a step towards me. I'm so glad you came. I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. I'm here to listen, nothing more. Martha, you said you had something to tell us both. So talk. Martha nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I've been lying to you both about everything. For the next 20 minutes, Martha spilled her secrets. Her affair with a family friend, Richard's embezzlement from his company, their impending divorce, and her desperate plan to use our money to cover it all up. With each revelation, Jake's face grew paler, his hands clenching into fists. "How could you, Mom?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "How could you lie to us like this?" Martha sobbed, reaching for Jake, but he recoiled. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could fix everything before you found out." I stood there, a storm of emotions raging inside me. Anger at Martha's deception, pity for her desperation, and a growing realization that Jake had been as much a victim of her manipulation as I had. "Jake," I said softly, turning to my husband, "did you know any of this?" He shook his head, looking shell-shocked. "No, God, Emma, I had no idea. I thought Mom just needed our help. I never imagined." "That's why I called you," Martha interjected, her voice pleading. "I realize now how wrong I was. About everything. I need your help, both of you. Please." I laughed bitterly. "Help? After everything you've done? You tried to steal from us, Martha. You nearly destroyed our marriage." "I know," she wailed, "and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you both. But right now, I need your help to fix this mess with Richard. If we don't act fast, he'll expose everything, and we'll all go down." Jake turned to me, his eyes desperate. "Emma, what should we do?" I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it. The crossroads where I had to decide not just the fate of my marriage, but the future of our entire family. "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. "We're not doing this, Martha. Not anymore." "But," Martha started, but I cut her off. "No more lies, no more schemes. You made this mess, and you're going to face the consequences. We all are." I turned to Jake, my heart pounding. "I love you, Jake, but I can't keep living like this. We can't keep enabling your mother's behavior." Jake nodded slowly, realization dawning in his eyes. "You're right. Mom, I'm sorry, but Emma's right. We can't help you cover this up." Martha's face crumpled. "But what am I supposed to do? Where will I go?" "That's not our problem anymore," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Jake, we need to talk. Alone." As we left Martha sobbing on the couch, Jake and I retreated to the kitchen. The air between us was charged with unspoken words and lingering hurt. "Emma," Jake began, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been such a fool. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. I saw the man I fell in love with, but I also saw the weak-willed son who had let his mother come between us. "I don't know, Jake," I said honestly. "I love you, but I don't know if love is enough anymore. We have a lot to work through." Jake nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. Whatever it takes, Emma. I want to make this right." As we stood there in our kitchen, the sound of Martha's sobs drifting in from the living room, I realized that this was just the beginning. We had a long, hard road ahead of us, facing the consequences of Martha's actions, rebuilding trust, and figuring out if our marriage could survive this ultimate test. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever happened next, I knew I had the strength to face it head-on. 1 year later, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and the promise of a fresh start. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, and I was finally ready to close this chapter of my life. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss. "Congratulations on the promotion, Emma. Can't wait to see what you'll do as our new marketing director." I smiled, a sense of pride washing over me. This was what I had been working towards all along, recognition for my skills and dedication, not judgment for my ambition. As I unpacked, I came across a photo of Jake and me from happier times. A twinge of sadness hit me, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of peace. We had tried to work things out after Martha's confession, but the trust was too badly broken. In the end, we both realized that sometimes love isn't enough. The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. I opened it to find Martha standing there, looking older and more subdued than I remembered. "Emma," she said softly, "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to apologize, again, and to give you this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for a substantial amount, far more than she'd ever tried to take from us. "It's everything I have," Martha explained, her voice trembling. "I sold the house, my jewelry. I want to make amends for what I did to you and Jake." I stared at the check, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. "Martha, Please," she interrupted. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I hope it helps you start your new life. I see that now." As I looked at this woman who had caused me so much pain, I felt the last of my anger melting away. "Thank you, Martha, but I don't need this. I've already started my new life." I handed the check back to her. "Use it to start over yourself. Learn from this and be better." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "You're a remarkable woman, Emma. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." After she left, I sat on my new couch, processing what had just happened. My phone buzzed again, a text from Jake this time. "Heard about your promotion. Congratulations, Em. You always were the strong one." I smiled sadly, typing back a simple "thank you." As I hit send, I realized that this truly was the end of an era. Jake and Martha would always be a part of my past, but they no longer had the power to shape my future. I walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. My new life stretched before me, full of possibilities. No more compromising my dreams, no more dimming my light to make others comfortable. I was free to be unapologetically myself. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt a sense of excitement building within me. Tomorrow was a new day, the first day of the rest of my life, and I was ready to face it head-on, stronger and wiser than ever before. I thought about all the women out there facing similar struggles, torn between family obligations and personal ambitions, fighting to be heard and valued. I hoped that my story might inspire them to stand up for themselves, to demand the respect and love they deserved. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would use my new position not just to advance my career, but to mentor other women, to help them find their voices and chase their dreams. My journey had been difficult, but it had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of staying true to oneself. As night fell, I raised a glass to my reflection in the window. "Here's to new beginnings," I toasted, "to strength, to growth, and to never settling for less than you deserve." The future was bright, and for the first time in years, I felt truly, genuinely happy. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. After all, I was Emma, resilient, ambitious, and finally, gloriously free.